September 8th, 2022. London comes to a halt. No sirens, no explosions, no protests or festivals. Only one thing echoes across this ancient city: silence. Queen Elizabeth II passes away at the age of 96. And in that moment, an entire old world, a world of rituals, traditions, and order, fades with her. Millions pour onto the streets, not to protest, not to celebrate. They simply stand still, silent. A nation that once ruled a third of the world now bows before its own symbol. A woman who witnessed 7 decades of conflict, revolution, and progress. From Sydney to New York, Toronto to Mumbai, flags are lowered to half-mast. September 8th becomes the day the world learns to pause. But history never truly stops. And as the funeral bells fall silent in one place, elsewhere, the sound of explosions continues. September 2025. In Ukraine, the fourth autumn of the war arrives with nights brighter than ever. Not from lights, but from hundreds of drones and missiles tearing through the sky. From the night of September 6th into the 7th, Russia launches its largest attack since the war began. 810 airborne weapons, drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, target multiple cities at once: Kyiv, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhzhia. On social media, Ukrainians call it the Night of Metal and Fire. 5 people killed, 41 injured. 6 regions across the country turn into burning scars. And that number, 810, becomes a terrifying record in the history of this war. Full casualty count unclear. Enough to cover the blood and ash. Enough for the world to scroll past and move to the next story. The news floods in, videos spread, images appear by the second. But the most frightening thing isn't what we see, it's what we no longer feel. How strange. The more information we have, the less we feel. The more images we see, the less we understand. Perhaps, in those blazing nights, humanity is losing something more vital than control. We are losing the ability to feel. Like a cockpit, everything runs perfectly until one bolt comes loose. And then, it all collapses. September 8th, 1994. U.S. Air Flight 427 departs Chicago's O'Hare Airport at 6 p.m., bound for Pittsburgh. On board, 132 people. Business people heading home, families visiting loved ones, students returning to school. Different lives sharing the autumn sky. Everyone assumes it's just another flight. 50 minutes. Nothing complicated. But 10 minutes before landing, as Pittsburgh's city lights twinkle below, the radar loses signal. The Boeing 737 lurches sharply to the left. The pilots try to correct it, but the plane doesn't respond. It spirals, a deadly spin at 300 miles per hour, and crashes into a forest in Hopewell Township. Not a single soul survives. No terrorism, no bombs, no human error, just a small glitch in the rudder control system. A mechanical failure. Invisible, silent, but enough to pull a 120-ton metal aircraft into the abyss. It took 5 years for investigators to pinpoint the cause. 5 years analyzing every fragment, every cockpit recording, every flight data point. And when the final report was released, one sentence sent chills through many. No human was at fault. The system simply stopped responding. A sentence that feels both cold and familiar. Because that's also how many wars begin. When the system stops listening. When humans believe they're in control, while in reality, they're falling. The US Air 427 crash changed how the world designs aircraft. It led to critical improvements in rudder systems. It forced the aviation industry to admit, sometimes disasters don't come from mistakes, but from complacency. 132 lives were lost for the world to learn that lesson. Back to London, September 8th, 2022. When the news of the Queen's passing is announced, the world stops. Not just the United Kingdom, the entire world. Elizabeth II didn't create policies. She didn't command armies or decide wars or peace. But by existing through 70 years of reign, she made millions believe in a rare kind of order in this chaotic world. Born in 1926, she grew up in the shadow of World War II. While London was bombed, the young Princess Elizabeth served as a truck driver and mechanic in the Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service. She knew war not through books, but through sirens and the smell of smoke. In 1952, at age 25, she ascended the throne. And from then on, she witnessed it all. The fall of the British Empire, the Cold War, the birth of the Internet, 9/11, Brexit. 15 British prime ministers served under her reign. But the most remarkable thing about Elizabeth II wasn't what she did, but what she didn't do. She lived by one principle her entire life: never complain, never explain. That's how a symbol endures, through deliberate silence. In an increasingly noisy world where everyone must voice an opinion, she chose not to speak. And that silence became her strength. When she passed, people realized it wasn't just a nation losing a monarch, but the world losing an anchor. Losing the belief that amidst chaos, something could remain constant. And that should have been a lesson. September 8, 1951. In San Francisco, California, a city on the Pacific coast, 49 nations gather at the Opera House to sign a single sheet of paper. The San Francisco Peace Treaty. A thin document, but heavy with the weight of millions of lives lost in World War II. 6 years earlier, the world witnessed 2 atomic bombs drop on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hundreds of thousands died in an instant. Japan surrendered unconditionally. The war ended. But then what? Where does a devastated nation go? How does the world treat the defeated? The San Francisco Treaty was the answer. Not a death sentence, not revenge, but an opportunity. The treaty officially ended the state of war between Japan and the Allied nations. It restored Japan's sovereignty. It allowed the country to stand up and rebuild. And a miracle happened. Within 2 decades, Japan became one of the world's largest economies. From ashes, they built a new society. People often call a treaty the end of war. But in truth, it's only the start of a fragile balance. Peace isn't an outcome. It's an ongoing negotiation between fear and hope, between vengeance and forgiveness, between the past and the future. From San Francisco in 1951 to to London in 2022, to Ukraine in 2025. Humanity is still learning that lesson. Each generation anew. In 1504, the world's most famous sculpture, Michelangelo's David, was unveiled in Florence, Italy. In 1565, St. Augustine, Florida, was founded, the oldest European settlement in the United States. In 1900, the Galveston hurricane devastated Texas, killing over 8,000 people, the deadliest natural disaster in U.S. history. In 1926, Germany joined the League of Nations, marking its return after World War I. Every day in history holds countless moments like these: decisions, tragedies, small and great victories. And they all teach us one thing: no day is ordinary. Looking back, September 8th is like a mirror, reflecting all that humanity tries to hide. On one side, the silence of a funeral. On the other, the roar of war. On one side, a symbol enduring for 70 years. On the other, a system collapsing in seconds. On one side, a peace treaty. On the other, a night of metal and fire. But amidst all these contrasts, one thing keeps humanity alive: the ability to pause and listen. When the Queen passed, the world learned to be silent. Not the silence of indifference, but of respect. When the plane fell, the world learned to recheck every tiny detail. Because sometimes survival depends on a single bolt. When war breaks out, the world, however slowly, however clumsily, learns to return to the negotiating table. Because history teaches, revenge never ends. War, it only births new ones. Because no matter how many times we fall, humanity still wants to believe it can fly. No matter how many times we fail, humanity still wants to believe it can do better. And no matter how noisy this world becomes, there will always be moments of silence. To hear ourselves again, to remember we are still human. September 8th, the day the world learns to be silent, to hear its own heartbeat. To remember, amidst all the noise, all the chaos, there is still the ability to pause, reflect, and choose a better path. Perhaps that is the most important lesson this day wants to remind us.